Many actresses of your generation have complained about the dearth of roles for older women. I mean, it's a historical fact, as we know, that in Shakespeare, men are heading towards King Lear. With women, really, it's only the Countess in All's Well.
Luckily, there's been quite a few women heading towards King Lear.
Well, some of them have played it. Do you fancy having a go?
No, I don't. No, I wouldn't be able to do it. But I'm thrilled that some women have tried.
But on that point, though, because do you feel that? Do you feel that, certainly in the classical repertoire, there aren't those roles, and even in new plays, there are perhaps fewer?
Well, if you stuck only to the English drama, you'd certainly, I suppose that's roughly true. But you don't have to stick to only English drama. I mean, there's American drama, there's European drama, there's Asian drama. I mean, there's a lot of Russian drama, and some of them have extraordinary Eastern, Western European dramatists who've been forgotten. I mean, the National, over the decades, has brought some of them forward and reminded us that there's extraordinary wealth of playwrights and some extraordinary roles for women.
One of the roles that recently came...
David Hare writes wonderful parts for women.
And David Hare, in fact, directed you, and he didn't write it, but a role that came your way recently, which is an extraordinary thing. The Year of Magical Thinking, Joan Didion adapted from her memoir about bereavement, but there are many issues about that. Again, for a non-actor, it's a monologue of more than an hour and a half. You're alone on stage.
It's an hour and a half at its best.
Yeah.
1 hour 31.
But that, technically, though, to be alone on stage for that long and with no one to get you out of trouble if you were to get into trouble, are there techniques for dealing with that?
Well, you know, David Hare has considerable experience himself of standing alone on stage for an hour and a half.
Because he did Via Dolorosa.
He did Via Dolorosa. And he was directed by Stephen Daldry, who's, of course, a wonderful director as well as a close friend of David's. And apart from all the terrific specific direction that David gave me while we were working, he said to me, listen, you know, when that moment comes, and it will come, don't worry, when you stand there on stage or sit there on stage and you can't remember what you say next. He said, I've had that happen to me a lot, and sweat starts pouring and you have no idea what you're going to say next. Just take a deep breath, because it'll come to you. Just wait, and it'll come to you. So that was very good to know that. And
did it happen?
Oh, it did happen more than a couple of times. But I found, well, we had, you know, we had two things up our sleeve. One was we had a wonderful girl who was assisting the stage manager, who was running the lights and the cues, sound cues and everything, sitting on the left. And she was following the text. So if I looked directly at her, it was established and agreed that she'd give me the cue. Actually, she never had to, because we'd also established that I must take time. If I couldn't remember, so actually what I discovered was I'd automatically, my hands would go to my face for some reason. I didn't plan that. I guess it was sheer horror. And then I'd wait, and the words would come to me. And on some nights we found that I'd cut about 2 pages by coming up with the words that came to me. And in some cases they did come back. And that's very steadying when you find that out. Strangely enough, I mean, we kept a tab every night. Every night I'd work on the words and the thinking behind the words, and I'd be given, you know, however many mistakes I'd made written out. It's very much more methodical theatre work than people tend to think. Inspiration comes from the thoughts that produce the written word that comes out of your mouth. But oddly enough, when I performed it the very last time, last October in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, and I rehearsed with our stage manager who we'd worked with in America for a week, and then David came over and I rehearsed with him for a week, and then we had a few hours in the cathedral because of the services to run lights and sound, and we had some big giant video screens and a wonderful sound system. So for the first time I could speak completely intimately to the audience in a cathedral that's the largest Gothic cathedral in the world. And strangely enough, and of course our friend, the girl, was there, sitting in the front row in case I looked at her and did need. And I'd only rehearsed for 2 weeks, and I haven't got a memory that remembers everything at all. And I'd made less mistakes in that performance. It was a benefit performance for UNICEF and for the UNRWA that works for the Palestinian refugee families. Strangely enough, I made fewer mistakes, and I think it was because of the cathedral, and we were in this very special place, and I think that inspired me to not be thinking anything, and somehow it all came.
Yeah.
But then, that sounds a bit mysterious, and acting isn't really that mysterious, although there are moments of mystery, because it touches deep depths in human history and human beings.
It also seemed to a lot of people, when they were aware of this, it seemed brave, not just mysterious, because the whole context had changed by the time you did that performance, because what that play is about, bereavement, had happened to you. But I couldn't imagine you could ever do that play again, but you were able to do it.
Well, I did it to keep a promise. I'd planned to do it before Natasha died. I'd made a promise to do it, and I couldn't do it on the date that had been planned. I just couldn't. But I promised that I would, and I talked with Joan Didion and talked with David Hare and with my family, our family, all of us, and came up with a date as near to All Souls' Day as possible, because that's a very ancient religious festival. It goes back before Christianity. So we found a date that was a Monday, and I just had to keep my promise, because I guess, we're all made that way, especially actors and actresses. We're made that if you say you'll turn up at such and such a time, you turn up at such and such a time. In fact, you turn up half an hour before the time. So I guess that's sort of an inbuilt thing, but I'm glad I kept the promise. It came at the right time, about 8 months after Tash died.